Imagine you're reading this gripping, beautifully written
I
novel.
love a good book analogy.
Right. So you are completely invested in these characters. The stakes are incredibly high, and the plot is just accelerating toward what promises to be this massive life-altering
Well, you're
climax.
turning the pages as fast as you can.
Exactly. And then, right as the tension peaks, you turn the page and it's just blank white paper.
Ugh, the worst.
Yeah. The story doesn't resolve. It doesn't even leave you with a cool cliffhanger. It just abruptly stops.
Like they just forgot to print the rest of the book.
Exactly. And, when we think about our own future, we usually fill it with these elaborate fictions like where we'll travel, what kind of person we'll eventually become, or how we're going to spend our retirement.
We love planning.
We do. But when it comes to the very end of the timeline, we hit what one of our sources today calls the bald scenario.
The bald scenario. I mean, that's a bleak way to put it, but it's accurate.
It really is.
Yeah.
We just picture a blank page, feel this cold spike of dread, and quickly slam the book shut.
Yeah, it acts as this abrupt, featureless wall in our minds. We treat death as a void that has, like, absolutely nothing to do with the vibrant, messy, ongoing narrative of our actual lives.
Right. It's just a completely separate thing.
Exactly. We put mortality in this separate, sterile box, basically under the assumption that thinking about the end of the story will somehow ruin the chapters we're currently living.
But, by refusing to look at that blank page, by treating death as just this sudden, unfair interruption, we might actually be missing the exact mechanism that gives our entire story its meaning.
That is the big question, isn't it?
It is. So today, our mission is to confront the one absolute certainty you and literally everyone you know shares.
We are diving deep into the ultimate universal experience.
Yes, we are. We're unpacking this massive stack of philosophical texts today. We've got everything from the ancient Greeks and classical Taoists to, 20th century existentialists.
And some really fascinating contemporary analytical essays, too. So from collections like Death and Philosophy, Continental Philosophy.
Right. It's basically an intellectual detective mission to figure out how brilliant minds over millennia have processed this fear of mortality.
Yeah.
And more importantly, to see if looking directly at the mechanics of death can actually teach you how to live more fully right now.
It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
And to tackle a universal fear like this, a logical first step is to see if we can simply, outthink it.
Just logic our way out of being terrified.
Exactly. Western philosophy actually has a very long tradition of trying to dismantle the fear of death through pure reason.
Starting way back, right?
Yeah, starting heavily with ancient thinkers like Epicurus and his later Roman follower Lucretius. They deployed this brilliantly simple, strictly logical defense mechanism.
Which is?
Well, they argued that death shouldn't scare you because, fundamentally, death is nothing.
Just nothing. Okay, so the underlying logic they use there is based on a concept called experientialism.
Right, experientialism.
And the argument basically goes like this. The only things that can be categorized as genuinely good or genuinely bad for a human being are things that you can actually experience.
Right, you have to be there to feel it.
Exactly. Like a toothache is bad because your nervous system actively processes the pain.
Ouch, yeah.
And eating a great meal is good because your taste buds and your brain process the joy. But death, by definition, is the absolute cessation of all experience.
Your nervous system is just gone.
Gone. Therefore, Epicurus famously concluded, death is nothing to us. When we exist, death is not present. And when death is present, we do not exist.
It creates the ultimate logical loophole. I mean, you literally cannot be around to be bothered by the state of being dead.
It's kind of a mic drop moment for Epicurus.
It really is. And Lucretius takes this basic premise a step further with what's known as the symmetry argument.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, so he points out that before you were born, there was an infinite abyss of time where you did not exist.
Just billions of years of nothing.
Exactly. And you don't sit around today having panic attacks about, say, the year 1800.
No, I really don't.
Right. You were perfectly content in the void of non-existence before your birth. So the argument goes, why on earth should you stress about the year 2200?
Because it's exactly the same void.
Exactly. The void after your life is perfectly symmetrical to the void before it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, as neat and tidy as that logic looks on paper,
It is very tidy.
it feels completely hollow to me when applied to real life. Like, let's use an analogy. The missing the party concept.
Yeah, I'm listening.
So Not being at a party before you even arrive feels perfectly fine. You're at home, you're getting dressed, you're on your way, no harm done.
Right, you're not missing out yet.
But arriving at the party, having a fantastic time, getting really invested in the conversations, and then being forcefully dragged out the door while music is still playing.
And everyone else is still dancing.
Exactly. That feels like a massive, tangible loss. Leaving early is entirely different from not having arrived yet.
Yeah, and that analogy captures the exact friction modern philosophers have with the Epicurean view.
They don't buy the loophole either.
Not at all. In our sources, Thomas Nagel brilliantly dismantles that symmetry argument by identifying death fundamentally as a deprivation.
A deprivation, so it's taking something away.
Yes, death isn't just a neutral return to a prior state of zero. It's an act of theft. It deprives you of the future time and the future experiences that you otherwise theoretically could have had.
That makes so much more sense. Because the time before I was born couldn't possibly have belonged to me anyway.
Right, you didn't exist to claim it.
Like I couldn't have been born 1800. I would be a completely different biological and psychological entity.
It's hardly a different person.
But the time after my death is different. If I get hit by a bus at 40 instead of living to 80, those 40 lost years were theoretically on my ledger. They were mine to live.
Exactly. Nagel highlights that the asymmetry exists because the arrow of a human life only points in one direction.
Forward.
Forward. Over time, you accumulate a self, a history, a personality, and this ongoing trajectory of projects and loves.
You build a life.
You do. And snuffing that out isn't returning a blank slate to the factory. It is shattering a dynamic, moving structure. That is why death hurts, logically speaking. It deprives a living person of unfulfilled potential.
So if the real sting of death comes from the fact that it deprives us of future time, the obvious ultimate solution would be to just live forever.
Right, just remove the deprivation completely.
Yeah. If we never have to leave the party, we never suffered the loss. But digging into the sources, the philosophical consensus on immortality is surprisingly grim.
It really is. You'd think philosophers would love the idea of infinite time to think, but no.
Not at all.
The philosopher Bernard Williams, alongside the writer Jorge Luis Borges in his short story The Immortals, explores the mechanics of unending life. And they conclude it wouldn't be a paradise at all.
What would it be?
It would eventually devolve into a nightmare of profound tedium.
Oh.
I mean, think about how human motivation actually works.
We do things because we're on a clock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Time is scarce. If you have infinite time, the urgency to write a book, to tell someone you love them, or to make any meaningful choice completely evaporates.
Because you could always just do it a century from now, or a millennium from now.
Right. Borges depicts his immortals as basically paralyzed. They do absolutely nothing for centuries because no single action holds any weight.
Wow. So it is the very boundary of death that gives a life its shape?
It provides the frame for the picture.
Right. Without a frame, the painting just bleeds out endlessly into nothingness. It just becomes a blur.
And this realization pulls us directly into the work of the 20th century existentialist Martin Heidegger.
Ah, Heidegger. Things are about to get heavy.
A little bit, yeah. For Heidegger, death isn't just a curtain dropping at the end of the play. It's an ever-present possibility stitched into the very fabric of every single minute we are alive.
Meaning we are always aware of it on some level.
Yes, he argued that human beings exist as being towards death.
Being towards death. Okay, to make this relatable, think about the ultimate deadline at a job.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, so if your boss gives you a massive project, but explicitly tells you there is absolutely no deadline, what happens?
You endlessly procrastinate.
Exactly. You never prioritize it because there's always tomorrow. The deadline is the only mechanism that forces you to act, to prioritize, to cut out the fluff.
It forces action.
But here is where I struggle with Heidegger. Carrying around the constant blaring awareness of your own ultimate biological deadline sounds like a recipe for a panic attack.
It does sound incredibly stressful.
Right. Doesn't that just create a state of unbearable, paralyzing anxiety?
Well, what's fascinating here is that for Heidegger, that specific anxiety is the cure, not the disease.
Wait, the anxiety is the cure?
Yes. He argued that the vast majority of us are trapped in a state he called everydayness.
Everydayness, just sort of going through the motions.
Exactly. We just drift along, operating on autopilot. We do what society expects of us. We gossip. We climb corporate ladders without asking why. We buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like.
The classic crap.
Right. We live entirely in the superficial. But when you truly internalize that your time is strictly finite, when you feel that deep, unsettling anxiety of the ultimate deadline, It violently yanks you out of that everydayness.
It shatters the autopilot. It
Exactly.
forces a radical kind of focus.
Heidegger calls this moving into authenticity. When you deeply accept that you could die at any moment, all those trivial societal expectations just burn away.
Because you don't have time for them anymore.
You literally don't.
Yeah.
You are forced to look at your life and choose what truly matters to you because you do not have the time to live someone else's life.
So the boundary of death doesn't paralyze you. It acts as a solvent.
A solvent. I like that. Stripping away everything fake so you can be uniquely yourself.
That is a very powerful framework. But I mean, carrying around an ultimate deadline 24/7 sounds exhausting.
It is a very intense way to live.
Yeah, it frames life as this highly individualistic, solitary standoff against the ticking clock. It makes you the lonely hero fighting against the abyss.
Very Western existentialist.
Right. So what if the mistake Western philosophy makes isn't just how we view death, but how we view the timeline itself? Like, we need to see if there is a way to view death not as a looming cliff we're all getting pushed toward, but as a natural, integrated part of the scenery.
To find that perspective, we have to look away from the West and examine Eastern philosophical traditions.
Okay, let's pivot.
Specifically, classical Taoism and Zen Buddhism, which offer a radically different paradigm.
How so?
Well, in Western thought, life and death are locked in a dualistic war. Life is the light, death is the dark, and one eventually defeats the other.
Usually death.
Right. But Taoist texts, like those of Zhuangzi, reject this completely.
Yeah.
They view life and death as correlative.
Correlative. So they are mutually dependent, like yin and yang, or the turning of the seasons.
Exactly. You can't have spring without autumn.
There is a profound absence of absolute beginnings and absolute ends in this worldview. There is only an ongoing, ceaseless process of change.
Death isn't an annihilation of the self. It's simply a transformation, a reconfiguration of the universe's vital energy.
There is an incredible anecdote in the sources about Zhuangzi that illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, the story about his wife.
Yes. So his wife passes away, and his friend goes to visit him, fully expecting to find him weeping in despair.
Naturally.
But instead, Zhuangzi is sitting on the floor, banging on a tub, and singing.
Which is quite the reaction to becoming a widower.
Right. His friend is appalled and asks how he can be so disrespectful to her memory.
And what does he say?
Zhuangzi explains that initially, of course, he grieved. The loss hurt. But then he reflected on the sheer mechanics of her existence.
The mechanics of it.
Yeah, like before she was born, she was part of the formless energy of the cosmos. Then that energy transformed into a living, breathing person. And now she is simply transformed again, returning to the vast, formless chamber of the universe.
It's all just shifting energy.
Exactly. So to sit around weeping, he realized, would show a profound ignorance of how nature actually works. So his mourning transformed into a celebration of her continued participation in the cosmos.
Wow. It naturalizes death. Instead of an isolated tragedy happening to you, it becomes an essential chord in the larger symphony of existence.
Which is a beautiful way to look at it.
It is. And this deep acceptance morphs into a very active, rigorous psychological practice when we look at Zen Buddhism.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but also where I start losing the thread a bit.
Let's unpack it.
We see references in the texts to Zen masters like Shisan talking about learning death or rousing death energy.
Right.
That sounds like a complete oxymoron to me. If death is the end of all biological function, how on earth are they generating vitality or energy from it?
It does sound contradictory.
Yeah.
But you have to look at texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is traditionally read over the bodies of the deceased to guide them through the bardo.
The bardo, that's the in-between state, right?
Yes, the bardo is a transitional state, the space between one life ending and the next beginning. But psychological commentators, including Carl Jung and several scholars in our sources, argue that this text is actually a deeply therapeutic tool for the living.
For the living? Wait, really?
Yeah, because we experience transitions or quote-unquote deaths all the time in our daily lives.
Oh, I see. Like the death of a career when you get fired, or the end of a long-term relationship.
Exactly. Or even just the loss of an old version of your identity as you age.
And human beings are terrible at navigating those transitions.
We really are. We get stuck. We suffer because of our attachments to those old identities. We refuse to let the old version of ourselves die.
So learning death means what, exactly?
It means mentally practicing the art of detachment in real time. It's a psychological rehearsal of letting go of your ego, your vanities, and your rigid expectations of how your life was supposed to go.
So by continually experiencing these psychological mini-deaths, we avoid spiritual stagnation.
We clear the slate.
Right. By repeatedly dying to our old selves and letting go of who we used to be, we return to the present moment with heightened clarity and a renewed capacity to actually live.
Yes, the death energy is the vitality that rushes in when you stop spending all your psychological resources trying to keep a dead version of yourself on life support.
Wow. Okay. So we've gone from logic to existential deadlines to cosmic recycling and ego death.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But, reading through these sources, I couldn't help but feel a nagging friction.
What kind of friction?
Well, whether it's the Western existentialist standing heroically alone, facing the abyss to find authenticity, or the Eastern sage peacefully letting go of all attachments.
Wait, peacefully letting go, both of these approaches treat death as a highly individual, almost entirely internal journey.
It's very focused on the self.
Exactly, and that completely ignores the messy, entangled, deeply connected reality of being a human being.
Ah, yes. Robert Solomon, a philosopher highlighted in our sources, attacks this exact blind spot.
What does he say? He accuses a massive portion of the philosophical tradition of suffering from what he calls morbid solipsism.
Morbid solipsism, meaning viewing death entirely through the lens of me, myself, and my mind, as if the rest of the world doesn't exist.
Exactly. Solomon argues that philosophers get so swept up in the high-minded metaphysics of nothingness or the cosmic flow of energy that they completely ignore what normal people are actually terrified of.
Which is?
Well, when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. with a tight chest, fearing death, you aren't usually mourning the metaphysical loss of your own consciousness.
No, you're terrified for the people you're going to leave behind.
Exactly. You're worried about how your children will cope or how your spouse will pay the mortgage. You're grieving your unfinished projects and how your community will remember you.
Because we aren't isolated brains in vats, we are nodes in a massive social web.
Right. We belong to other people.
And part of our fear is also deeply tied to vanity and a loss of physical control.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a visceral detail in the texts discussing Homer's Iliad where the hero Hector is killed by Achilles.
That scene is brutal.
It is. The true horror for Hector wasn't the metaphysical end of his life. It was the fact that his body was tied to Achilles' chariot and dragged through the dirt.
The humiliation of it.
Yes. A massive part of our fear of death is the fear of bodily humiliation. We fear our physical selves losing autonomy and becoming an object of pity or disgust to the people we love.
And this raises an important question about how our culture processes these fears today.
How so?
Because we are so disconnected from the physical, communal reality of death in modern society, we often swing to the opposite extreme to cope.
What does that look like?
Solomon warns against a phenomenon he calls death fetishism.
Death fetishism.
Yeah, this is the romanticization of death as the ultimate thrill or the final authentic experience.
Oh, like the whole live fast, die young mentality.
Exactly. You see it in the tragic narratives of rock stars dying young, or in extreme subcultures where risking death is seen as a badge of honor, proving you live on your own terms.
It treats death like a provocative lifestyle choice.
But death isn't a lifestyle choice, and it isn't an experience you get to brag about afterward.
Right. As the thinker Elias Canetti points out in our sources, death is an absolute tragedy.
Canetti takes a very hard line on this.
He does. He actively rages against death.
Yeah.
He refuses to make peace with it. He refuses to naturalize it. And he does so precisely because death shatters the dynamic, living web of social connections that makes life worth living in the first place.
It violently rips a hole in the fabric of a family and a community.
Exactly.
Canetti highlights the violence of this separation. To just calmly accept it, or worse, to fetishize it as a cool aesthetic, is to cheapen the immense value of the human relationships that are being permanently destroyed.
So what does this all mean for us? It means that if you are terrified of death, you shouldn't feel like a philosophical failure who just hasn't achieved enough Zen detachment or someone who is failing to live authentically.
Not at all.
Your fear isn't a weakness. It is tangible proof of your love. You fear death because you deeply love the people in your life, you love the roles you play, and you love the world you've built together.
Fearing the loss of that social reality is the most profoundly human response possible.
It really is. It grounds the abstract dread into something deeply beautiful.
The grief we anticipate feeling and the fear of causing grief in others is simply the shadow cast by the love we currently experience.
You cannot have the light of those connections without the shadow of knowing they will end.
All said.
Thanks. So, we've traveled through a vast spectrum of human coping mechanisms today. We watched Epicurus and Lucretius try to outthink the void.
We saw Heidegger use the ultimate deadline to shock us awake.
We watched Taoists and Zen masters use the cycles of nature to clear out our stagnant egos. And finally, Solomon and Kennedy grounded all that high-minded theory back into the messy reality of our love for one another.
It's a lot to process. But to synthesize all of this and put it to a practical test, I want to leave you with a thought experiment from Friedrich Nietzsche.
Oh, I love this one.
It's intense. It's a concept he called eternal recurrence, and it forces every one of these philosophies into the harsh light of reality.
Set the stage for us.
Imagine that tonight a demon sneaks into your room and tells you that your life is an hourglass, and it is going to be turned over and over again for all eternity.
And the catch is, you don't get to reincarnate as someone new.
Nope.
You don't get to fix your mistakes or try a different career path. The demon tells you that you have to live this exact life.
Every single detail.
Every single physical pain, every heartbreak, every boring commute, but also every joy, every triumph, every moment of profound connection. You have to repeat this exact sequence of events in the exact same order over and over and over again forever.
Nietzsche presents this as the ultimate psychological weight. It completely removes the escape hatch of an afterlife or the comfort of just dissolving into nothingness.
It traps you in the present.
Exactly. It forces you to look at the life you're living, the relationships you're cultivating, and the choices you are making at this very second.
So if that demon visited you tonight and gave you that news, would you throw yourself on the ground and curse him in absolute terror? Or would you fall to your knees and say, "You are a god and I have never heard anything more divine"?
That is the question.
We invite you to use that question as the ultimate metric for your life right now. Look at the people around you, the work you do, and the way you handle your daily transitions.
Are you making choices that you would gladly repeat for all eternity?
Or are you just staring blankly at the page, waiting for the bald scenario to bail you out of a story you don't even like? The book is still open. The story is yours to write, right up until the ink runs out.